It was a bright and peaceful morning at Harvard University. The campus was full of energy as students hurried to their classes with books in their hands and excitement in their voices. The tall trees swayed gently in the cold breeze, and the sound of birds made the place feel alive. Inside the main academic building, Professor Lewis walked with a cup of coffee and a heavy folder full of research notes. He was one of the most respected professors in the Department of Languages and Culture. His sharp mind and deep knowledge of world languages made him famous among students and staff. Professor Lewis was known for his strict nature and love for perfection. He spent long hours studying old texts, trying to uncover how ancient languages connected to modern ones. Many admired him, but few knew the loneliness behind his hard-working face. He often spent nights in his office surrounded by books, not because he had to, but because he truly loved his work. That morning, he walked through the quiet hallway toward his office. The floor was shining and the air smelled fresh. As he entered the corridor, he saw the janitor cleaning near the door. The janitor's name was Amir. He was a quiet man, polite and always working carefully. He never complained, never argued, and always greeted people with a gentle smile. Most professors and students hardly noticed him. To them, he was just another worker who kept the halls clean. But there was something calm and wise about Amir's face that made him different. "Good morning, Amir," Professor Lewis said as he passed. Amir looked up with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir," he said in clear English. The professor nodded and continued walking. But then he heard Amir speaking again, this time to another worker who was fixing a light at the end of the hall. Amir was speaking Spanish, and his words flowed smoothly like a native speaker. His tone and pronunciation were perfect. The professor stopped for a moment, surprised. It was rare to hear someone switch between languages so easily. He turned his head slightly and pretended to look at some papers while listening carefully. After a short moment, Amir helped a student who seemed lost. The student was from France, and to the professor's amazement, Amir spoke to her in fluent French, explaining directions clearly. The student smiled and thanked him before walking away. Professor Lewis was stunned. He had never imagined that the quiet janitor could speak multiple languages. As a language expert, he could tell when someone truly mastered a language, and Amir's tone was flawless. That day, the professor could not stop thinking about what he had heard. He spent his morning class distracted, his mind wandering back to the janitor in the hallway. Could it be true that Amir knew more than just English, Spanish, and French? After his class ended, the professor walked back to his office. Amir was still working, cleaning the window glass near the stairway. The professor greeted him again and watched him for a few seconds. He wanted to ask, but he decided to wait. Maybe he had just misunderstood. Maybe Amir only knew a few phrases. But deep down, something told him there was more. Over the next few days, Professor Lewis started observing Amir quietly. Every morning, he found new reasons to walk through the main hall just to see him. Each time, he noticed something new. Amir spoke to a group of visiting students in German one day. Another time, he helped a Chinese tourist in Mandarin, his pronunciation clear and confident. A week later, the professor even heard him use Italian to talk to a researcher who had lost her notebook. Each conversation sounded natural, as if Amir had lived in those countries for years. Professor Lewis could not keep it to himself anymore. He felt both amazed and confused. He decided to speak to Amir directly. One afternoon, when the hallways were empty and quiet, the professor walked toward Amir, who was mopping the floor near the library entrance. "Amir," said the professor gently, "can I ask you something?" Amir stopped and nodded. "Of course, sir." The professor smiled. "I have heard you speak many languages. How many do you actually know?" Amir paused and looked thoughtful for a moment. Then he said, "I never counted properly, sir. Maybe 9 or 10. The professor almost dropped his folder. "9 or 10? That is unbelievable," he said. "How did you learn all of them?" Amir smiled calmly. "I used to travel a lot, sir. When you live among people, their language becomes part of you. I like learning how people think and speak." Professor Lewis was impressed. "You have a gift, Amir. Do you know how rare it is to speak 9 languages fluently?" Amir shook his head. "I just like words, sir. They connect hearts." The professor stood silent for a few seconds. "You should not be cleaning floors. With your talent, you could be a teacher here," he said sincerely. Amir looked at the floor and smiled gently. "Titles do not make a man happy, sir. I am happy doing what I do." Every job has its own value. The professor respected his humility, but he could not understand why someone so talented would settle for such a job. He thanked Amir and walked away, but his mind kept spinning with thoughts. That night he sat in his office reading Amir's words again in his mind. Languages connect hearts. It was a simple sentence, but it carried deep meaning. For the next few days, Professor Lewis could not focus on his research. He found himself thinking about Amir again and again. Who was he really? How could a janitor speak 9 languages with such skill? He wanted to know Amir's story. There had to be something behind this quiet man that no one knew. One morning, the professor decided to ask the administration office about Amir. The clerk there looked through some records and said, Amir joined the university 5 years ago. He never caused any trouble. Always on time, very polite and very hardworking. But there was no extra information about his education or background. The file was almost empty except for his address and joining date. This made the professor even more curious. He wanted to meet Amir outside work, maybe have a real conversation and learn more about his life. But Amir was not an easy man to approach. He spoke little and always stayed busy. That afternoon, the professor saw Amir sitting alone in the cafeteria during lunch break. He was reading an old book written in Arabic. The professor took a deep breath, walked to his table and asked politely, May I join you? Amir smiled. Of course, sir. Please sit. The professor sat down and said, Is that Arabic? Yes, sir. It is a poetry book from my home country, Amir said. The professor looked impressed. Do you also read Arabic fluently? Amir nodded. Yes, sir. It was my first language. The professor leaned back in his chair, amazed once more. You are a mystery, Amir, he said kindly. Every time I speak to you, I discover something new. Amir smiled again. There is nothing special about me, sir. Everyone carries stories. Mine just happened to be in many languages. That sentence stayed in the professor's heart. He realized there was more to Amir than met the eye. He wanted to help him, to give him a chance to use his talent in a better way. But he also knew Amir was proud and humble, not someone who sought attention. That night, as the professor prepared for bed, he looked out his window at the quiet Harvard campus. The lights from the library glowed softly in the distance. He thought about Amir's peaceful smile and his deep knowledge. He made up his mind. The next day, he would do something that might change Amir's life forever. The next morning at Harvard University started like any other day. Students walked quickly through the wide hallways, some carrying books, some chatting about their classes. The air was full of energy and hope. Professor Lewis arrived early, but this time his thoughts were not on his research. His mind was still on Amir, the quiet janitor who spoke 9 languages like a native speaker. All night, the professor had been thinking of a way to help him. He wanted the world to know Amir's talent, not to let it remain hidden behind a mop and a cleaning bucket. The professor believed that real talent should be seen, not ignored. He felt it was unfair that someone with such a gift had to live a quiet life, unknown to everyone around him. When Professor Lewis entered the building, he saw Amir sweeping near the staircase. The morning light touched the floor and made it shine. Amir looked peaceful, humming a soft tune in some language the professor could not identify. It sounded like an old song full of memories. Good morning. Amir, the professor said warmly. Good morning, sir, Amir replied with his usual smile. The professor paused for a moment, then said, Amir, would you mind meeting me in my office later today? I would like to talk to you about something important. Amir looked a bit surprised but nodded politely. Of course, sir. After my shift ends, I will come. The professor smiled and walked away. His plan had already started forming in his mind. He decided to invite Amir to one of his classes, not as a janitor but as a guest who could show the students what true passion for language looked like. He knew the students would be amazed. When the afternoon came, Amir knocked softly on the professor's office door. Come in, said Professor Lewis. Amir stepped inside, still wearing his simple uniform. His hands were clean and his face showed a mix of curiosity and calmness. Please sit down, said the professor, pointing to a chair. I have been thinking about our last talk. I told my students that real knowledge can come from anywhere, and I want them to see that for themselves. Would you agree to visit my class tomorrow and speak to them? Amir looked surprised. Me, sir? What would I say to them? Just share your story, said the professor kindly. Tell them how you learned so many languages. You can speak a few words in each one. They will be inspired. Amir hesitated. I am not used to speaking in front of a crowd, sir. I am just a janitor, the professor smiled. You are much more than that, Amir. You have a gift. Let others see it. It will make a difference. Amir stayed silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. If you think it will help, I will do it, sir. Good, said the professor with a bright smile. Tomorrow morning, my class starts at 10. You will be my special guest. The next morning, the classroom was full of students. They were excited because they had heard that a special guest was coming. None of them knew who it was. Professor Lewis entered with a smile and said, Today we will learn something very special about the power of language. We have a guest who will show you that learning is not limited by titles or jobs. The students looked at each other in confusion. Then the door opened and Amir walked in. He looked shy but calm, holding a small notebook in his hand. The students were surprised. Many of them had seen him cleaning the hallways before. Some whispered to one another, wondering why the janitor was in the classroom. The professor raised his hand for silence. I want you to listen carefully, he said. This man you see here speaks 9 languages fluently. Today he will show you that knowledge can be found anywhere if you have curiosity and respect. Amir looked at the class and smiled softly. Good morning, everyone, he said in English. I am Amir. I work here in the building. But before coming here, I lived in many places. I learned different languages from people I met. I did not go to university like you, but I learned by listening, reading, and speaking with others. Then he began to speak. First, he spoke in Spanish, introducing himself with a smooth accent. The students clapped softly, surprised. Then he switched to French, then German, and then Italian. Each time, his tone and pronunciation were perfect. After that, he spoke in Mandarin, Arabic, Russian, and Japanese. Every language sounded natural and full of life. The classroom was completely silent as everyone listened. Some students were so amazed they forgot to take notes. Amir's voice was calm and confident, and his words carried the beauty of every language he spoke. After he finished, the students broke into applause. Many stood up to show respect. The professor felt proud and happy. He could see the admiration in every student's eyes. Amir smiled humbly and said, Languages are like doors. When you open one, you see a new world. I love learning because it helps me understand people. We may look different, but our words connect us. When the class ended, the students surrounded Amir with questions. How did you learn Mandarin? Was it hard to remember so many words? Which language is your favorite? Amir answered every question with patience and kindness. He told them that he used to work in different countries and learned languages by helping others and reading books. He said he never studied formally but always practiced speaking with people around him. Professor Lewis stood at a distance, watching proudly. The same janitor everyone ignored had become the center of attention. His talent had finally been seen. The classroom that once looked ordinary now felt like a place of discovery and respect. Later that day, the news about Amir spread through the university. Students talked about the janitor who spoke 9 languages. Some professors were surprised, while others refused to believe it until they heard it themselves. Within a few days, Amir became the most talked-about person at Harvard. Even the university's head office called Professor Lewis to confirm the story. The professor explained everything, saying, Amir is not just a janitor. He is a living example of what real learning means. The head of the department decided to meet Amir personally. When Amir entered the office, he looked nervous, but he greeted everyone politely. The head of the department asked him a few questions in different languages, and Amir answered each one perfectly. Everyone in the room was amazed. After the meeting, the head of the department said to the professor, You were right. This man has a rare gift. We must do something for him. Professor Lewis smiled. I have an idea, he said. That evening, the professor invited Amir to his office again. The sun was setting and the light made the room warm and peaceful. Amir, he said, you changed many people's minds today. Everyone at the university is talking about you. Amir looked surprised. I did not mean to cause attention, sir. I only wanted to help. The professor shook his head. You did more than help. You inspired them. Tomorrow, the university council wants to meet you again. I think they are planning something good. Amir looked down, unsure how to respond. Sir, I am happy with my work. I did not do this for reward. I know. said the professor kindly. That is what makes it even more special. But sometimes life gives us a chance to do more than we ever imagined. Amir nodded slowly. If it is meant to be, I will accept it, sir. That night, Harvard University felt different. The story of the janitor who spoke 9 languages had touched many hearts. But no one knew that this was only the beginning of a much bigger surprise waiting to come. The next morning at Harvard was full of whispers and excitement. Everywhere in the hallways, people were talking about Amir. Students in the cafeteria discussed his class visit. Professors mentioned him during meetings, and even the office staff could not stop sharing what they had heard. It was rare to see a story like this, where a quiet janitor suddenly became the most admired person in the whole university. Professor Lewis walked through the corridor feeling proud. He had always believed that true talent could come from unexpected places. He never imagined that his belief would come to life so perfectly through Amir. That morning, the head of the department called him for a meeting with the university council. Inside the meeting room, the members were already seated. The dean, Dr. Harris, spoke first. Professor Lewis, your story about this man, Amir, has surprised us all. We have confirmed his language skills, and it is clear he is exceptional. We want to know more about him. Do you have any idea where he learned so much? Professor Lewis replied. He told me he learned while traveling in different countries. He said languages were his passion. But beyond that, I know little. He keeps his past private. The dean leaned forward. Private or not, a man with that kind of gift should not be mopping floors. I want to meet him today. A few hours later, Amir was invited to the main office. He walked in humbly, wearing his clean uniform and carrying his small notebook as always. He greeted everyone politely. Dr. Harris smiled and said, Amir, you have created quite a stir here. Everyone is amazed by your knowledge. Tell us a bit about yourself. Where did you learn all these languages? Amir paused for a moment and looked thoughtful. His calm eyes held a quiet strength. Sir, he said softly, I was born in a small town far from here. My family could not afford school, but I loved reading. I found old books in markets and learned from them. Later, I worked in different countries, met people, and picked up their languages. Every place taught me something new. The world has many teachers if we know how to listen. The room was silent. Everyone was listening carefully. There was honesty in his voice that touched their hearts. Dr. Harris nodded slowly. You have a rare mind, Amir. If you are willing, we want to offer you a position as an assistant language instructor. You will help students learn basic conversation skills in different languages. What do you think? Amir looked surprised. His hands trembled slightly. Sir, I am honored, but I am not sure if I deserve it. I never studied in a university. I am not a professor. Dr. Harris smiled kindly. Knowledge is not always written on a paper, Amir. You have real experience. We can learn from you. Amir stayed silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, If I can help the students, I will do my best, sir. Everyone in the room smiled. The offer was accepted. Amir was officially given a new role at Harvard University, though he still chose to help clean sometimes because he said it kept him humble. News spread quickly. The students cheered when they heard that Amir, the janitor, was now a language instructor. Some students even waited outside his new small classroom to meet him. The first lesson he gave was simple but beautiful. He stood before the class, smiled gently, and said, When I was young, I wanted to speak to the world. I thought language was a wall, but later I learned it was a bridge. Today we will start building our own bridges. He began teaching basic greetings in different languages, and the students followed him eagerly. He made them laugh with small stories about how he learned words in strange ways. He told them how a Spanish farmer taught him jokes, how an old French librarian made him read poetry, and how a Chinese chef taught him numbers while they worked in a kitchen. The students were inspired by his stories. He made them see that learning was not just about books, but about people and kindness. Professor Lewis often stood outside the classroom, watching Amir with pride. He had never seen such natural teaching. Amir's words were simple but powerful. He taught not only language, but also respect, patience, and love for learning. One afternoon, after class, a student named Maya stayed behind. She said, Sir, you make learning so easy. How do you remember so much? Amir smiled. Because I remember faces, not just words. Every word reminds me of someone who taught it to me. I never forget people. Those words stayed in Maya's heart. She later told the professor that Amir's lessons made her want to travel and learn languages too. As days passed, Amir's popularity grew. Students visited his class not just to study but to listen to his stories. Reporters from the local newspaper heard about him and came to Harvard to write an article titled, "The Janitor Who Speaks 9 Languages." They took his picture in the classroom and asked him how he felt about his new name. Amir smiled and said, "I am not special. I am just a man who listens. Every person can do something amazing if they listen carefully to life." The article spread quickly, and soon people from other universities wanted to meet him. Harvard received letters from language experts around the world, amazed by his ability. Some even invited him to join research projects. One day, a tall man with gray hair came to the university. He introduced himself as Dr. Klein, a famous linguist from Germany. He had read about Amir in the paper and wanted to meet him in person. He said to Professor Lewis, "I have spent my life studying how people learn languages. If what I have heard is true, this man is extraordinary. I would like to test his skills." Professor Lewis agreed, and a meeting was arranged. In a quiet classroom, Amir sat across from Dr. Klein. The professor and a few students were also present. Dr. Klein began by speaking in French. Amir replied perfectly. Then he switched to Russian, then to Mandarin, and then to Arabic. Amir answered every question smoothly without hesitation. The test continued with Greek, Turkish, and Hindi. Each time, Amir's accent was nearly perfect. After almost an hour, Dr. Klein stopped, amazed. "This is beyond natural talent," he said. "This man's brain remembers and connects languages like a map. I have never seen anything like this." The students clapped and Amir smiled shyly. "Thank you, sir. I only learned because I loved it." Dr. Klein looked thoughtful. "Amir, did you ever study linguistics formally?" "No, sir," Amir said. "I just observed people. I found patterns in how they spoke. Every language has its rhythm. Once you feel it, you never forget it." The professor and Dr. Klein exchanged a look of wonder. They both knew they were seeing something rare. That evening, Dr. Klein met with the dean and Professor Lewis. He said, "This man could help us create a new kind of language learning program. He understands how people truly learn. Harvard should support him." The dean agreed. They planned to give Amir a chance to design small workshops for students who wanted to learn languages faster, through real conversation methods. When Amir heard about it, he was surprised again. "I am not a scientist, sir," he said. Professor Lewis smiled and said, "You do not need to be one. You are already a teacher who understands the heart of language." Amir nodded quietly. "If it helps others, I will do it." As weeks passed, Amir's workshops became popular. Students filled every seat. He used games, stories, and songs to teach. Learning felt alive. The university staff often came to watch and left inspired. One evening, when the last class ended, Professor Lewis stayed behind to talk to Amir. "Do you realize what you have done, Amir? You have changed the way people think about learning here." Amir smiled. "No, sir. I did not change them. They were already ready to learn. I just reminded them that language is not about words, it is about people." Professor Lewis nodded slowly, feeling deep respect for the man who had once cleaned his hallway. But he also felt a question growing inside him. Amir's knowledge seemed endless. Who was he before he came here? Where did he really come from? That question would soon lead to another surprise, one that would shock the entire university once again. The following month, Harvard University was busier than ever. Students from different departments were attending Amir's language workshops. The halls that once echoed only with hurried footsteps now carried the soft sounds of greetings spoken in many languages. Amir had become a symbol of inspiration. Everyone admired his calm nature, his patience, and his passion for teaching. Professor Lewis felt proud every time he saw him in the classroom. Yet deep inside, curiosity grew stronger. The professor could not stop wondering about Amir's past. How could someone without formal education learn so many languages so perfectly? How did he travel to so many countries with no background or connections? These questions stayed in his mind day and night. One evening, the professor stayed late in his office, surrounded by old research papers. Outside, the campus was quiet, and only the distant sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways. He was about to leave when the janitorial office door opened slightly. He saw Amir inside, sitting alone with a small file in his hands. The professor hesitated, then knocked gently. Amir looked up and smiled. "Good evening, sir." Still working? The professor smiled back. Yes, as always. I see you are still here too. Amir nodded. I was just finishing some papers. The professor's eyes fell on the file Amir was holding. It looked old, with stamps and travel marks. What is that, Amir? It looks important. Amir looked down at it for a moment, then said quietly, It is just a piece of my past, sir. The professor felt curious but did not want to sound rude. May I ask what kind of past? Amir sighed softly. A past I left behind when I came here. It was full of noise, work, and endless travel. I wanted peace, so I chose this simple life. The professor sat on the chair near him. Amir, you are a mystery. Everyone here respects you, but I feel there is something more. Who were you before you came to Harvard? Amir stayed silent for a few seconds, then opened the file slowly. Inside were old photographs, certificates, and letters. He handed one paper to the professor. It had foreign text and a seal from an international university. The professor read it carefully. His eyes widened. This is from the United Nations, he said in surprise. It says you worked as a translator for global peace meetings. Amir nodded. Yes, sir. That was long ago. I worked with different teams to translate between leaders and diplomats. I traveled to many countries. I met people from different cultures and helped them understand one another. The professor stared at him, shocked. Amir, this is incredible. Why did you never tell anyone? You worked for the United Nations. You should be proud. Amir smiled softly. Pride brings noise, sir. I wanted silence. I had spent many years in busy rooms full of power and words, but very little kindness. Everyone wanted to speak, but no one wanted to listen. When I left that world, I came here. I wanted to be among students who still believed in learning with open hearts. The professor felt a deep respect. You are a man of wisdom, Amir. Still, people should know your story. It could inspire thousands. Amir looked thoughtful. Maybe one day, sir. But for now, I am happy here. Harvard gave me peace. That is all I need. The professor nodded, though part of him still wanted to share Amir's story with the world. He felt it was too valuable to stay hidden. The next week, Harvard held a small seminar on world languages. Professors from other universities were invited. Professor Lewis was chosen to host the event, and he asked Amir to help him prepare. Amir agreed, happy to assist. During the seminar, language experts discussed different teaching methods. Some spoke about digital tools, others about grammar systems. But when Amir gave a short speech about the beauty of human connection through words, the whole room went silent. He said, Languages are not just sounds or letters. They are feelings. When we speak another language, we step into someone else's world. We see what they see and feel what they feel. That is how peace begins. His simple words touched everyone deeply. When the session ended, several professors approached him with appreciation. They asked about his background, but Amir only said, I have learned from people, not from books. After the seminar, one of the visitors, Dr. Klein from Germany, came to Professor Lewis. Your janitor is a genius, he said. Do you know he understands dialects that even trained linguists find difficult? This man is a treasure, Professor Lewis agreed. I know, Dr. Klein, but Amir does not want attention. He prefers peace, Dr. Klein smiled. Sometimes peace and recognition can walk together. The world needs to hear him. Later that evening, Professor Lewis went home with mixed feelings. He respected Amir's wish for a quiet life, but he also felt that hiding such a gift was unfair to the world. After much thought, he decided to take one careful step. Without telling Amir, he wrote a letter to an international conference on languages, describing Amir's unique story. He did not use Amir's full name, only calling him the Harvard Janitor. He attached a short summary of Amir's speech from the seminar. Weeks passed. Then one morning, Professor Lewis received an email from the conference organizers. They wanted to invite Amir to speak as a special guest at their global event in Switzerland. The email said, This man's story is a light of hope for language education. Please bring him. The professor was thrilled but nervous. He printed the letter and went to meet Amir in the workshop room. Amir was teaching students basic greetings in Japanese when the professor arrived. When the class ended, the professor handed him the letter. Amir, please read this. Amir took it, his eyes scanning the words carefully. He stayed silent for a long time. Then he looked up. Sir, you wrote this, didn't you? The professor nodded slowly. Yes, I did. Forgive me for not telling you, but I wanted to help the world see what you have to offer." Amir did not speak for a moment. His face showed no anger, only deep thought. Finally, he said, "You meant well, sir, and I thank you. But I do not know if I can face that world again." The professor said softly, "Amir, you said languages connect hearts. Maybe this is your chance to connect even more hearts. You can inspire people beyond this campus." Amir sighed, then smiled gently. "Perhaps you're right, sir. If this can help others learn the beauty of words, I will go." The professor smiled with relief. "Then I will arrange everything. You will represent Harvard and yourself." The next few days were full of excitement. The news spread quickly across the university. Students were proud that their humble teacher would speak at an international stage. Some even made banners that said, "Our janitor, our hero." Amir remained humble, saying only, "I am going to speak, not to be famous." When the day came, he left for Switzerland with Professor Lewis. On the plane, Amir looked out the window, the clouds shining in the sunlight. The professor asked, "Are you nervous?" Amir smiled. "No, sir. I have spoken to the world before, but this time I speak not for leaders but for learners." The professor nodded, understanding the depth of his words. When they landed, they were welcomed by officials and reporters. Amir became the center of attention again, though he remained quiet and polite. The conference hall was large and full of people from many countries. When Amir stepped onto the stage, the crowd went silent. He began his speech in English and then smoothly shifted between several languages, explaining how each one carried its own soul. He spoke about kindness, understanding, and listening. Every word came from the heart. When he finished, the audience stood and applauded for a long time. Some had tears in their eyes. The professor felt proud beyond words. Amir had once been the quiet janitor of Harvard, and now he was the voice of unity before the world. But even after all the applause, Amir said quietly to the professor, "Tomorrow I want to go back home to Harvard. That is where my peace lives." The professor smiled. "Of course, Amir, you belong where your heart is." The bright sun rose over the Harvard campus, touching the red roofs and the tall green trees with golden light. The news of Amir's speech in Switzerland had already reached every corner of the university. Students, teachers, and even the cleaning staff spoke about him with pride. For them, Amir was no longer just a janitor. He was a symbol of quiet greatness, someone who proved that knowledge can shine anywhere, even from the simplest heart. 2 days after the conference, Amir returned quietly. There were no banners or music waiting for him, though many had wanted to arrange a celebration. He had requested the staff not to plan anything big. He only wished to go back to his normal life, to his small cleaning cart, to his friendly greetings in the hallway, and to his peaceful time in the library after work. When Amir entered the campus, the air felt fresh and familiar. He looked at the tall buildings and smiled softly. A few students noticed him and ran toward him. "Sir, we saw your video online," one student said. "You spoke in so many languages. It was amazing." Another student added, "Everyone on social media is talking about you. You are famous now." Amir laughed gently. "Fame is a shadow. It walks beside you when there is light, but disappears when darkness comes. What matters is what stays in your heart." The students listened quietly. They had never heard anyone speak with such calm truth. Later that morning, Professor Lewis came to meet Amir in the janitor's office. He looked proud and emotional. "Amir, you were magnificent," he said. "The whole world admired your speech. You represented Harvard and humanity in one breath." Amir smiled kindly. "Thank you, sir. But I only said what I believe. Languages are bridges. People build them with words of kindness." The professor nodded. "You have changed the way everyone sees this place. Students are now talking about learning languages, not just for jobs, but for connection. You started something beautiful." Amir looked down for a moment. "If that is true, then I am happy." That day passed quietly. Amir continued his routine. He cleaned classrooms, arranged chairs, and helped students find lost items. It was as if nothing had changed. But in truth, everything had. Everywhere he went, people greeted him with respect. Even visitors asked to take pictures with him, though he politely refused most of the time. The university board soon invited him for a meeting. Amir entered the grand meeting room, where the dean, professors, and several senior officials were waiting. The dean stood up with a warm smile. "Mr. Amir," he began, "we are deeply honored by what you have done. You reminded us that true education is not about degrees but about understanding people. For this reason, we would like to offer you a new position at Harvard." Amir looked surprised. "A new position, sir?" The dean nodded. "Yes, we want you to become our cultural language advisor. You will help students and teachers connect with global communities. You will also lead special workshops on empathy and communication." Amir stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said softly, "Sir, I am very thankful. But I must ask, who will clean the halls if I change my job?" Everyone in the room smiled at his humility. The dean said kindly, "Do not worry about that. We will make sure everything is cared for. You have already cleaned more than floors, Amir. You have cleaned hearts." The room became quiet for a moment. Then Amir said, "If this new role can help more people learn and grow, then I accept." The meeting ended with applause. Professor Lewis was the first to shake his hand. "I told you, Amir," he said. "The world needed to hear your voice. Now you will guide even more people." Amir smiled gently. "Thank you, sir. But I will still visit the janitor's room. It is where I began, and I will never forget it." As weeks passed, Amir started his new role. He held small group sessions where students discussed cultural understanding. He used simple examples from his own travels. He taught them how tone, gesture, and kindness could change the meaning of a message. In one session, he said, "If you want to learn a language, first learn to listen. Words are doors, and listening is the key." His classes became very popular. Even senior professors attended them secretly to listen to his wisdom. But Amir never acted like a great teacher. He spoke slowly, used simple words, and always made others feel equal. One afternoon, while walking near the garden, Amir saw a young janitor cleaning the pathway. The boy looked tired and nervous. Amir went closer and said kindly, "You are doing a good job. What is your name?" The boy replied, "My name is Daniel, sir. I just started last week." Amir smiled. "Welcome, Daniel. How are you finding the work?" Daniel hesitated. "It is fine, sir, but sometimes I feel invisible. People pass by and they do not even look at me." Amir placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I understand that feeling. I once cleaned these halls too. But remember, your work brings beauty to this place. Without you, the light would not shine on the floors and people would not see the beauty around them. Every task has meaning." Daniel looked up, surprised. "You cleaned here too, sir?" Amir nodded. "Yes, and I still clean in my heart, because humility keeps us close to truth." The young janitor smiled, and from that day onward, he worked with pride. Later that evening, as Amir walked through the quiet library, he saw Professor Lewis sitting by the window writing notes. The professor looked up and said, "Amir, I was thinking of writing a book about you. Not to make you famous, but to tell the world about what true wisdom looks like." Amir smiled gently. "If it helps others learn kindness, then I agree. But please write not about me. Write about what we learned together." The professor nodded. "Then it shall be called The Janitor Who Spoke to the World." Months passed and the book was published. It became widely read across universities and schools. People were moved by the story of the quiet janitor, who taught the world about unity through language. Letters of gratitude arrived from different countries. Some said they started language programs in poor schools because of Amir's message. Yet despite all the fame and recognition, Amir remained the same. Every morning he still greeted the guards at the gate with a smile. He still stopped to help lost students. Sometimes he even picked up a broom when he saw a dirty corner. When someone asked him why he still did that, he said, "Because no job is small when done with care." Years later, Harvard built a new hall for cultural studies and named it the Amir Hall of Language and Peace. At the opening ceremony, Amir was asked to give a few words. He stood on the stage looking at the students and teachers gathered there. His voice was calm and warm as he said, "This hall is not for me. It is for every person who believes that words can heal hearts. Never forget that wisdom is not found only in books. It is found in how we treat one another." The audience clapped for a long time. Many people had tears in their eyes. Professor Lewis stood near the back, proud and grateful. He whispered to himself, "He came here as a janitor, but he taught us all how to be human." After the ceremony, Amir quietly walked to the garden. The sun was setting and golden light touched the trees. He sat on a bench watching students laugh and talk in different languages. It filled his heart with peace. He closed his eyes for a moment and thought of all the journeys that had brought him here. from crowded streets and noisy meetings to this calm, beautiful place. He smiled, whispering softly, "This is home." As the evening bells rang across the campus, Amir stood up and walked back toward the janitor's room, where his journey had first begun. His story had reached the world, yet he remained the same humble man who believed that true greatness lives in silence and kindness. And so, the janitor who once swept the floors of Harvard had swept the hearts of millions, leaving behind a message that would shine forever.